Valerie, welcome to the Art of Feeling Better podcast. It's my new podcast, just getting incredible people around the table to talk about topics and subjects that are really, really important. And education is obviously, it's my passion, and it's the biggest topic that I've been covering for many, many years. So the focus of the next few weeks is heavily around how we, look after young minds and teachers and staff, and, how the future of education is looking. And we've only recently met, and I know that we've had a couple of video calls, video meetings, and I think we're very much on the same page with our kind of thoughts and feelings around that. So I thought it'd be a really good opportunity just to have a catch up anyway and have a chat and just find out about your work and what you've been doing and how things are shaping up your end. Obviously, we've got our webinar next Thursday, which will be the 1st of May.
Yeah,
which will be exciting because we can start bringing more people in the room then, can't we, and having these more powerful conversations with a bit of direction behind them. So that's really all it's about, is having a good old catch up. So fill me in on what you've been doing and your kind of, if you don't mind, just a real quick whistle stop of your background and why you're passionate about it.
Yeah, I suppose I'll start by saying I'm not a conventional learner, and I didn't realise that until I had left education.
Really? Right.
Yeah. And I found my education. So I went to a convent on the west coast of Ireland. So that was probably the worst environment that you could have put me in.
Well, that's traditional learning, I imagine.
Yeah.
Oh.
And some of it I'm grateful for because of the discipline that was involved.
Sure.
And that's something I'm easily distracted, and very taken with the next thing. So in a way, I think that probably helped me to develop some kind of discipline. Didn't sit at most ease with my nature, but I needed to do it. And it's only looking back, I think, maybe that was a benefit to that.
Yeah. So at the time, I guess it would have been a challenge, but as a neuro learner, and I get that, the shiny things, it's really difficult to stay focused. A lot of people that I work with, that's the biggest struggle is being able to maintain focus. But it's really good to know that reflecting back, the discipline is a useful tool, because it doesn't feel like that, does it, for most of our young people? It feels,
no, not at all.
Yeah, I get it. I totally resonate there. It does. You need that even more, I think, when you have that kind of brain that struggles to focus. It's a tool and a strategy to develop, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So I was really curious when I was younger, which meant I was asking questions or maybe challenging things. And again, going back in time, that wasn't always perceived as being a good learner. I wasn't an obedient learner who sat there and took notes and things. So again, hindsight is a great thing for me. But when I left school, I went on and worked in an organisation. I came to live in Scotland, so I'm Irish originally, and came to live in Scotland and worked in an organisation. And really quickly, a wonderful woman who was my boss was able to identify that I was really good at supporting other people to learn on the job. And she was sort of the wind beneath my wings, really. She said, I'd love you, I'm going to send you, can you do a CIPD course? And so I got into learning and development that way. And I think my own experience enabled me to be much more aware of how to support greater diversity in terms of learning and learning together.
And you're a coach, aren't you? I mean, you're an incredible coach. That's what you do now, isn't it? And to train the trainer and trying to shift the system that way, which I completely agree is the only way, is to have that approach. So I'd love to hear more about your work in that area as well, and what you found it as well, working with other education professionals.
So I ended up working in further education in Scotland for 20 years as a lecturer, and worked a lot in learning and development. So I was involved in the teacher training, the what's called a TQFE program, Teaching Qualification for Further Education. So I was involved in that, and also involved in leadership. And being someone who's curious, like I've never had just one path. I've always had things going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And a number of years ago, I became involved in, well, I took part in Otto Scharmer's program, a ULab program about leading from the emerging future.
Wow.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's an online learning MOOC, but you can bring local communities together. Wow. And it was very liberating for me. And I ran a hub at the college that I worked in. And there's a couple of stories that have stuck with me that I've heard myself say a few times. So at one point, I was delivering, it was an access to accounting course, and I was doing a module on entrepreneurship. And I went around the class and I said, why are you here? And one of the girls said, because it's the first one on the list.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know where it came from, but for some reason, I just said to her, yeah, but you and I know you're better than that.
Wow.
Now, it actually took a minute for the penny to drop. I was thinking, what does she mean it's the first one on the list? But it was access to accounting. So when she looked at college courses, it literally was.
Such a shame, isn't it, there?
Well, I felt quite sad because I thought, why can learning not be something that people look forward to? Why can showing up in education, whether it's school or college or university, be something that people are excited about? And I think for that to happen, it needs to be meaningful for them.
Absolutely.
So that, together with some other experiences, asking other people, and they were saying, oh, my mom thinks it's a good idea, or a guidance teacher thinks it's a good idea. And I couldn't find any. There were lots of students who were just there. That passion that you'd be, I really want to be, or I really want to do it. So I then, using the ULab model where you take an idea and you prototype it, I then developed a course for students that we ran in the college. And it was a 6-month course, and it was designed to help and support young people to get to know themselves better and figure out what they wanted to do next. So they were the topic.
Brilliant.
And we ran it for 6 months, and what fun we had. We played games every morning. That's a great way to start any day, I think, just having some fun. And then drawing the learning from it. And we very much co-created it. I took topics and I asked them, I said, what does you and work? What does that mean to you? And they populated a blank sheet of paper, and I said, right, well, let's find out about this. So we very much co-created it. I was able to fill in areas if I felt they hadn't factored in or they maybe weren't aware of yet. But also they brought areas that I wouldn't have been on my radar. So it really was, we were learning together.
Beautiful.
And we were co-creating something. And that was just wonderful. Mind you, within the education system, it was really difficult.
Oh, yeah, I hear you. Yep. What were the challenges? I imagine, I know we don't know each other very well, but I imagine you're a little like me in that you are happy to push the boundaries and you're happy to have the conversations that need to be had. Well, I tend to have them everywhere, and sometimes they're well received, and sometimes not much. But whatever you're comfortable with sharing, what kind of challenges did you find within that space? Because it's definitely a space that I've been in. What resistance and how did that make you feel? How did you deal with that?
I found it really, really difficult for a number of reasons. There were some people who were right behind me, who could see that as a vision, and there were others who couldn't understand that program, couldn't understand how it would fit in our current system. And for me, I really didn't want it to be something that was reshaped into something that ticks the boxes for funding.
Open system,
yeah. So tick the boxes for funding, for assessment, for timetabling, for teacher allocating. I didn't want it to tick any of those boxes. But the people who are, coordinating workloads, etc., that's what they need to do. We need to timetable you, and we need to have a mix of people on the course, and we need to make sure there's a qualification at the end of it, and we need to make sure we can get it funded. So bureaucracy and being wedded to the way that things are currently done were the main barriers, I would say.
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with that. And it's really frustrating, isn't it? Especially when you can see the impact that different routes have on people, and the profound life-changing impact, and the difference that can be made, and you get met with the stonewall, and you think, just listen, just think differently. Yeah. It's really, really, it really can be quite soul-destroying, but we know it's the right thing to do. I think we just find ways around it, don't we? So, and a question that I've been dying to ask you since last time we spoke, because it kind of, when we've had some of our sort of group meetings, we've touched on various things, and I think we may end up discussing a bit further on the first. But it's a big question. Do you think that we can create the changes needed within the current system, the current framework? Do you think it's possible? Can we do that?
Absolutely. So I'll just explain a little bit more about what I do. So currently I have a role as leadership lead with the College Development Network. So that role involves me delivering leadership programs, be they Chartered Management Institute qualifications or bespoke executive leadership programs. I've developed one of those. So I deliver a lot of leadership training in the sector, and I have a lot of contact with the FE sector in Scotland. And one of the things that I say is change is going to come. There is no doubt about that. When we stop and we look at the drivers for change, all the things that are going on around us, whether it's political, whether it's environmental, whether it's to do with young people's mental health, whether it's to do with employment, there are so many drivers that we don't have any control over. They're happening anyway.
Yeah.
And if we resist the change, then somebody else is going to take charge of it.
Yep.
And that may mean that it changes the face of it completely. It may mean that our institutions and organizations merge. It could mean anything. But for me, I feel that there's a real crucial role to play in being part of that change.
Yeah.
And often I have to take a step back myself and think, right, what assumptions do I have that might prevent me from bringing my best self to this? Because I can get quite critical. I can kind of look at things sometimes and think that's never going to work. Have this inner conversation. And then I have to call myself out and say, right, my intention is to contribute positively. So what do I need to be able to do that?
That's brilliant. That is such a great skill. I think if there's one thing to pass on, that would be it for me, is being able to support people to challenge their own assumptions, and that critical thinking is just crucial, isn't it, to get those changes happening properly and impactfully.
And it's not easy, because the voice in there going, no, they're getting it wrong. You've got it all right, Valerie, in your head. And then I hold up a mirror, Valerie, you do not.
Exactly. Yeah. What are you
keep your mind open? Yeah.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because you have these human physical responses, and they're based off all of your experiences from the past, all of your lenses and your filters, and it's really tough, isn't it? Because we're only human. But I think having the accountability, and I guess coaching, it's the same for me, having the coaching skills and the training and the kind of supervision and that kind of that whole arena does help you develop those skills, doesn't it, to be able to do that.
Yeah. However, I have a vision for what education could look like. Do you want me to share that with you?
Absolutely love to share that.
So it's I drew this about 7 years ago. I was in one of the ULab workshops, and I just started drawing this thing, and I forgot about it, and I found the journal about a year ago, and I thought, oh my Lord, I have been chipping away trying to contribute to that kind of vision, even though I'd forgotten the image that I had drawn.
There, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it just came right back. But I think we need to move away completely from exams, completely from the measures, the dissected curriculum And I think learning really needs to be meaningful and impactful. And I think it needs to be bigger than the individual. And this is at all levels. So I think if you're learning something, to be able to see how that contributes to society, to the environment, to family, to community, is what will make it really meaningful for people.
Yeah.
So linking learning to real life,
Yeah.
rather than having it as something here where I take in some knowledge on a given day. I need to be able to remember
And
the correct
regurgitate
bits
it.
of it to be then judged and graded.
Validated as being, worthy of contributing to society.
Yeah.
It always baffles me how, I mean, when you say that, it makes so much sense. That feels to me like what learning is. It's total common sense. And then you apply it back to the system as it currently is. And I think it just baffles me why we're not doing this, because I mean, obviously there's a reason and rationale behind why we do what we do, but there's no doubt that it's incredibly harmful. And for me, in my sort of perspective, in my line of work, incredibly harmful for an increasing number of people as time goes on, not just young people and students, but staff, teachers, leaders, parents, really, really harmful. And I think when we were in our last conversation, I'd sort of mentioned, and I'm sure you had a little smile thinking, I thought she agrees with me there. Reaching several laws, in my opinion, around, safeguarding, there's minds that are being incredibly harmed. And I pick people up further down the line in, when we do projects in our homeless shelters or with addiction. And when I start to do sort of mapping and coaching and we do a bit of trauma work, it always unpicks back to an experience in formative years, and a lot of the time feeling not good enough, inadequate, unworthy. And when I profile and do a little bit of work there, these kinesthetic learners, the 95% of the people that I work with later on that are deeply traumatized, their learning style is just not set up for school systems. I think there's so much there to unpick in terms of how much damage we're doing, but it's big, isn't it? It's a big change that needs to happen.
It's big, and yet I think in some ways, I always think the future is here. I think if we stop and take time and look around at what little initiatives and programs and pieces of work are happening, they're glimpses of the future. And the work that you do is very much that. If I look at that, I get a glimpse of that. I think that's the stuff I want more of.
Oh, thank you. It's
that's the stuff that's going to make the difference. So it's about getting momentum and being able to shine a spotlight on all of these and sharing it. So I do think the future is.
I agree with you there. It is, and it's about the collaboration, isn't it? Proper collaboration, proper co-production. And like you say, these little pockets of work that great people are doing all over the world just need duplicate, and we need to get out of that all these silos and all these spaces where no, this is mine, and no, everyone needs this stuff, and everybody needs that support and knowledge and teaching how to do it. And if it works, great, we'll do it over there. And I think for me, that's the way forward. That's the way to do it. I think how to get that very big, complicated process down into actionable steps is to do just that. So I appreciate that, because sometimes it's really difficult, especially, as you can imagine, presenting the way I do, going out into the education system as a creative. I know it's lovely, all the fluffy stuff over there, let's just, we'll put a little bit of money into that. Can you just look after those naughty kids over there, because they're driving us mad in the, in the classrooms. And I think, oh, you're not getting it, are you? It's so much bigger than that. It just needs that, it needs to be taken seriously, these different approaches. And the amount of need, and especially in our area, I'm not sure how different it is in Scotland and how different it is in other parts, but more and more and more people are being sent to alternative provision. And it seems to be that the alternative provision and forest schools and getting, different ways of learning are becoming the mainstream. And it's kind of, I think you're right, it's happening anyway, because people are voting with their feet, and people are leaving one space and engaging with another. I just wish it was, and I said this to Chris, we had a catch up the other week. For me, the sort of the sad bit and the heartbreaking bit is the labels attached to it. If you are a normal person who is smart and intelligent, you're allowed to stay there. And if you're anything other, then you must be a little bit stupid, or you're not really going to do much in life, and then those labels stick. And it should be about how you learn. Where do you want to be? What works for you? Totally person-centered, but I completely agree. Person-centered, but meaningful, purposeful, bigger. That's definitely the key. So yeah, so it's exciting that we're living in this time, aren't we, where this change is happening.
Yeah.
And there's so many people doing incredible things. How can you see things from your perspective? I mean, working with further education and supporting staff, how is that for you? Because I know it's very different working with students, or I'm making a sweeping assumption there. I've done a fair bit of work with staff, but at that leadership level, is there the challenge there with breaking down assumptions and helping people to get out of that systemic approach and their own kind of practices? Or are you finding that it's an easy road and people are open to it now?
Oh, absolutely not an easy road. Well, the thing about it is I find that the people that I work with have huge passion and energy and have really good visions for what the future could look like. It's the bureaucracy that kind of stifles that.
The constraints that
Yeah.
just
So in Scotland, colleges are funded by the funding council, but you're funded based on the number of students that you have.
bums on seats, isn't it?
And there's a double bind then that's created. So you need to do everything you can to get the students in order to get the funding to be able to continue to grow your practice and grow, develop your staff. But if one falls, then there's an implication for the other.
That's hard.
And awarding bodies, have very specific criteria. I think with some qualifications, with many qualifications actually, they've been written in the past. Even if it was last year, they've been written in the past. And yet they can have a lifetime, as in a unit descriptor could have a lifetime of 3 or 4 or 5 years.
That's a great point. Really great point.
So you're tied to something from the past.
Yeah.
When, if we look at what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years,
it's irrelevant, isn't it?
Such a change. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I wonder how that would look in terms of practicalities of, what a big job it is, right? I guess it's down to assessment again, isn't it? It doesn't work. Changing frequently doesn't work within the current framework of assessment. But if things were changed there, then maybe there would be the flexibility to move.
Or even why write anything? Why not take a topic? Why not take a topic and say, what does it mean? What does it mean? Young people, go and find somebody who works in that area and ask them, what does it mean?
It's real learning. That's real learning.
Yeah. And then come back and let's put something together and live it and do it. And I know that there's a narrative, there's a narrative around parents want young people to get exams and grades and everything. And I think that does still exist. Having said that, since COVID, I know significantly more people who are more concerned for the general welfare of their children than the grades that they get. That's shifting as well.
And I'm hoping that my part to play is exactly in that area, because my work now, a lot of my work is around mental health and wellness and trauma and all the stuff that goes around with it. And the online work that I'm doing now, my school, Mojo, I mean, it's all very creative. Mojo School of Holistic Wellness is my online platform. And a lot of the work that I'm doing, because I can see the importance of it, is around our threat response and our trauma response and why we buy into this stuff, and the flock response and why we don't challenge things even though they feel uncomfortable in our bodies, and supporting people through that process. So I'm hoping that thing that I can bring to the table might be really useful in that shift if I can get it out there widely enough. And one of the questions I mentioned to Chris as well, and I'll sort of tell you now and see what your take on it is. I had a conversation a while ago with a head teacher actually, and we were looking at well-being. This was about 10 years ago, before wellness was a thing, and I was getting a bit of kickback because I wanted to work in the isolation rooms very differently, because I hated isolation rooms. I thought it was ridiculous, awful, horrific way of doing things. And I was kind of challenging the idea of just that, of attainment and exams, and why are we doing this? And the answer to my why question was, well, you need to get good grades so that you can get to college. Okay, well, why is that important? Well, that's important because then you need to get the place you want at university. And I, like the annoying toddler, well, why? I kept questioning why is the university important? Because you'll have the best chance at getting the job that you want. And okay, well, why is that important? And I kept questioning. And the end result was, well, because then you can earn lots of money and live a happy life. Aha, that's where we stop the conversation. If living a happy life is the measurement, why are we not measuring that? And why is the whole system set up not to promote happiness and wellness? And so maybe that's my bit to play, I think, is flipping that question. Like, what's the point?
I need to introduce you to somebody, another fantastic woman called Helena Good. And I worked with Helena, and she, and I'm saying this because you're saying you come from a creative perspective. So Helena comes from a creative perspective and worked in the college sector, and has set up her own business, is heavily supported now by Education Scotland. But her business is called Daydream Believers.
Oh. And there's a musical reference there. I love it.
And she's got a small team together, and they are doing the most phenomenal work. So they have developed a qualification, which is like an A level. I don't know if I've got my levels right now, because exams are called different things in Scotland and Ireland and probably in Wales as well. They're different to Scotland, aren't they? But anyway, so she's developed a qualification in creativity where failure is a key component.
Oh, I love it. One of my tattoos literally says that. I need to meet this woman.
Yeah. Well, I'll introduce you to her. So failure is a key component because of how it captures the learning.
It's literally how we learn.
And she has a website. If you have a look at Daydream Believers, and there are lots of free resources for teachers and schools to use to work with creativity with young people. But then there's 3 separate projects where they get groups in different schools to come together and just say, imagine they were going to space, and they were going to reflect back and say what we should have done, where we should have gone.
Wow.
Just fantastic creative programs.
Powerful stuff, and it's what lights our brains up, and it does make me really sad when funding's cut for, obviously it goes first from the arts, doesn't it, and these creative approaches, when you understand neuroscience and psychotherapy and you understand how the brain works, that's how we learn, that's how we retain information, it's how we grow. So a lot of the especially the sort of the more sort of trauma end of the spectrum, creativity is even more important. We'll start off just throwing painted things and building rapport and building space that's safe and exploring, creating, and that then helps create this lovely safe space to explore the other stuff. It's just work anymore going into a clinical space and expecting to get results. It's definitely the creative approach definitely more powerful than people really realize. So I'm so glad there's so many amazing people that are doing great things. I'm going to, second I get off this call, I'm going to be that website.
And this is why I say, like, there are glimpses of the future. It's already happening. There's little pockets of it.
Yeah,
we just need to shine a light on them and get momentum.
Yeah, and I think I speak to a lot of people, obviously, and especially now I've started with the podcast, speaking to a lot of people that I've known for probably 10 years or so that have been doing kind of similar things, so change makers that are really trying to open doors and do things. And there's a definite shift in the energy, and there's a shift in people's the way they're feeling a bit more inspired at the moment and not so bogged down by things, because there was COVID was a real pinch point, I think, because obviously COVID just wiped everything clean anyway, but just before 2018, 2019, there was a lot of us that were just absolutely exhausted from banging our heads against these walls and just getting it was really tough for a while. And that's so different now. In this last 12 months, there's a new energy, and there's new kind of feeling around the potential that actually people are listening. And I think it's sad that the reason for that, in my perspective, is they've got nowhere else to turn. There's, as I say, parents and children are voting with staff well-being, no one can manage the budget, there's budget cuts. So I think there's no choice. They're having to look at the alternatives, and we're all over here going, hello, welcome back. Welcome back. We're all right. We're still here. We're still here doing that. So that's really exciting for me, that there's a bit more credibility and people are taking us seriously, which is great, because we all want to do the same thing, don't we? We all want to do, and we don't want to do it together, collaboratively.
Yeah.
The skills that I have are the opposite to the skills that somebody else have, and they both totally valid and important, and we need to bridge the gaps, don't we, and do things together a bit more, I think.
And I think it's really important to recognize that there is no big bad wolf in this.
No,
I don't
absolutely.
think there's anybody in education who's trying to make sure we get it wrong and we keep it wrong.
No.
I think there's a genuine intention, even from the people who are caught in the bureaucracy, to get this right.
Yeah, I completely agree. The beast has just run away with itself, I think. We've got these post-war and Victorian principles that have been so ingrained, it's been
Yeah.
difficult to shift. And now, like you say, it's everybody wants change. They just don't know quite how it will look.
And I do think that we need to keep the lights on. We need to keep things going. It's not as if we can say, right, let's just shut this down for 6 months and start again. We're not in a position to do that. We need to keep the lights on. So there's a space, I think, for looking at, and this is drawing on the three horizons kind of perspective. Okay, so what's happening now? What are the visions for the future? And what are the initiatives that can take us there or can draw us back to our current system? Where the innovation is happening. So for me, the program that I developed, I thought was quite innovative, but the current system wanted to take it and mold it into how we currently do things, rather than let it be free and run for 6 months and not have all the tick boxes. So I think we need to be aware that there's tensions between what we want to bring about and what we currently have. There are tensions there. So I know, for example, in colleges in Scotland, we want educators to have more autonomy. We want students to have more autonomy, more freedom of thought. However, they still need to pass a test, and they still need to deliver a curriculum, and they still need to have session plans, and they still need to have work schedules, and they still need to have verification of work, whether it's internal or external. So all the systems keep kind of bringing them back to something quite rigid, when what we're looking for is something much more fluid. So how then do we navigate that space?
Yeah, I think that's the crux of it, really, for me. I think that is, because otherwise you're just having a vision, aren't you? And nothing ever changes. I think that's the sweet spot that we should be sitting in. We should be sitting in that change management, trying to create safety and trying to reduce the conflict and reduce the duplication, and really laying down testing things that work, and then reflecting back, and then bringing the right people in that can embed these new approaches in a really holistic way. And it's the change management and the pressure of staff and the pressure of everybody that are stuck in the system. It's incredibly hard, isn't it, to change something anyway, even when you're in space. I mean, I love change. I'm like the anomaly there. I'm like, oh, adventure, yeah. I don't have that response particularly. But I'm aware that normal humans have a resistance to change. So, when you're already stressed to oblivion, somebody comes in saying, right, we're going to do things differently again. Even if you don't want to be in the space you're in, it's like, I don't even want to, I've got my blinkers on, I'm in my lane, leave me alone. That's a thing to kind of manage as well.
But I think the other thing that's really important for educators is recognizing the phenomenal work that is being done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not as if it's a system that's just a shambles. It's not.
No, it's incredible.
It's a system that has some phenomenal work happening in there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the pace isn't as fast as it needs to be. I often do an activity where I take, whether it's booking a holiday or banking or, grocery, supermarket shopping, and I ask people to think about, in the last 20 years, what's the speed of change? And then look at the speed of change in education, and it's not changing at the same speed as other things around.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So let's look at what's really working. Let's look at what's great about what we currently do, and hold on to that, and let that maintain and support the change.
Yes. Yeah.
But take up, let's get a momentum to bring faster change and easier change. Make it easier to change as well.
should be in flow, shouldn't it? There shouldn't be resistance to that. It should be when it's right, it should just flow nicely with the right people and the right kind of resources and strategies in place. And for me, again, it's down to that identifying where the harmful bits are, which is really difficult because it feels like people are being challenged. I'm like, well, we're going to have to challenge because there is absolute harm for people. That mental health is a
Yeah.
huge around how we are approaching the current system, things in the current system, and how we're dealing with teacher well-being and how we're dealing with student well-being. It
Yeah.
really, I'm truly not just, I have a policy that says we've got this sort of, how are we really doing it, and what impact is coming out. And I've just been filming a module on the brain, on young brains, around the pace that we've evolved, like you say, over the last few years, especially the last 5 years, but the last 50 years, technology, we leap ahead way, way faster than we can adapt. So our emotional selves are completely
Yeah.
unable to adapt to anything. And we are young people, we're throwing them out there with all these advancements saying, do this, do this, do this. And then in the other space, no, don't do any of that. You need to do it this way. What a conflict and what a confusing space to be in for young people, where they have to, no wonder nobody knows who they are or what their identity is or what they're meant to be or what they're meant to do, because they're constantly trying to fit in with what they're told is correct and never encouraged to work out what is correct for them or what feels correct.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's not surprising that things are going from bad to worse and we've got these horrific waiting lists. It's we need this change. I had a conversation around with CAMS because I'm doing a lot of work with health at the moment. I've got some great conversations within local health board. We had this conversation so relevant to schools. We were talking about education and the waiting list, neurodevelopmental assessment waiting lists, and we had all these ideas of what can we do? There's like 6-year waiting list, and we need to be able to train up more people. Maybe the third sector will train them up to be able to assess. And I did my whole thing of like, put my digital hand up. Okay. Can we not think about why, like, can we ask them what they need? Because they're on the waiting list because they want a magic bullet formula when they get that piece of paper that will solve these horrific issues, but that's not coming either. Parents have this idea that as soon as they get the assessment, things will be put in place. Well, they're not. We know that. So let's just try and solve some problems in the meantime, and we won't need this huge big waiting list.
Yeah.
It's just reframing it, isn't it? Thinking a bit differently.
Yeah.
We need more labels. We need strategies, don't we, and tools.
And there's a great book called Disconnected. Don't know if you've ever read that. It talks about how we have become disconnected from meaningful work, meaningful values, community.
Yeah.
From childhood trauma, we've become disconnected from so many things that we have then a big space for anxiety and mental health challenges because of the disconnect to nature. I know you're doing great work in nature as well. And
it's a survival response. We're geared up to do that. Genetically, we have to disconnect. It's safety seeking, isn't it? We just go along, and that's how the nervous system works. Flock response and fawn response. My two favorite responses, flock and fawn. Like, just do as you're told because it's safe, even if my body feels horrifically wrong.
Yeah.
If I don't, there's something wrong with me. It's a huge thing. And people pleasing, I need to do that to stay safe. So I'll go against my values. I'll go against what I really feel is right, and do what I'm told to do or asked to do. And no one's got that space to learn, as you said at the beginning, about themselves and about what life means to them and about what their metric of success is and what they view as a successful, well-lived life. It's like, that's the way you do it. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. All right, let's get some diagnosis there so that we can all have a label to attach that to. Like, no, stop.
I think there's something else also worth looking at. And whether it's parents, and I've caught myself doing this and thought, oh my good Lord, I can't believe I did that. But I've caught myself looking at my kids, and I have a 15-year-old daughter, a 25-year-old and a 29-year-old. So I've seen, even in in their age difference, a big difference in terms of education, social media, etc. But often I hear parents, grandparents, but parents or older people saying, nobody did that for me when I was young. I was told just go out and play. When I was young, I wouldn't have been telling my mum everything about this, that, and the other. When I was young. And I heard the most wonderful line that just stopped me in my tracks. And it was, it's not about our past, it's about their future.
Oh, that's powerful, isn't it? That isn't
And
that.
it's not about the past or the context that I had when I didn't have any of this the pressures of social media or any of the other worries and concerns that some of our young people are carrying around now. I didn't have any of that. So it's not about my past or yours, it's about their future.
Oh, what a brilliant! I feel like that's where we end it, but I've got some questions to ask you. But that would be like the where the EastEnders theme tune comes in, or like the impact ending. In fact, I might actually cut that and I might finish with it and I might hate it because but that's it, isn't it? That is so very true, and probably one of my biggest challenges because I work across demographics and I don't, education is a small part of there's just lots going on, and I hear that so much from both sides. I hear
Yeah.
young people saying they don't get it. Like, I know. And then I hear the other generations, mine and upwards. I've got 4 children. Eldest is 25, youngest is 16, similar to yours.
Yeah.
And I hear the older generations that I work with constantly, because it's the only thing they know how to do
Yeah.
and they want help. We never had this in our day. We never had mental health in our day. I think you'll find we all have a mental health and a physical health. But
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. No, there wasn't any of this in my day. We just got on with it and fell out of trees, and and that's quite true. That the two things can coexist. That is true. I mean, I'm pretty sure there were exactly the same challenges and people struggling with their mental health as there is now, for
Yeah.
starters. However, if that's your experience with your past, that's totally valid and true. That is not what's going on now, and it's not what's going on for these young people.
Yeah.
That's the truth, and we
Yeah.
have to work with what's happening, like you say, right now, and how we're going to protect their futures. But it's hard, isn't it? Because if you can't relate, I mean, I've spent years and years and years training and immersing myself in all of these different communities and training and learning about the brain and learning about human behavior. So I'm really fortunate that I just understand. I'm a raging empath as well. So I just feel everything.
Yeah.
I get it, how if, you've not a clue what people are talking about, you have no way to relate, never experienced it. What are you going to do? Not only will you be frustrated at people whinging and complaining, but the only thing you can do is to advise them, well, stiff upper lip. We don't talk about this shit. We don't complain about this crap. We just get on with it.
Yeah.
That's all how to say, but it's damaging, not validating
Yeah.
people's current experiences. It's tough, really, really tough on that.
Mm.
But I think just knowledge, spreading the knowledge in a safe way and not being critical or judgmental, which is what I'm trying to do, is just shining lights, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. People then go, oh, didn't think about that. And like a lot of my family members are a great example. When I first started with our live show 10 years ago, next year it'll be, and we had drag queens and fire breathers, and we had people, just so many different amazing kinds of people. And I wanted to break down the barrier with labels. And like my husband's side of the family are very super traditional, and they're just like immersed in this crazy experience and not knowing what kind of language to use. And all of a sudden went from being quite sometimes homophobic and transphobic, and because
Yeah.
that was the way that they were raised, and that's just the assumptions they made, to being, I've just completely challenged my own assumptions here. I've just met someone and spoken to somebody and experienced something that has made me rethink my opinions on things.
Mm.
Great, let's do that. Let's create environments that help that and not challenge and say you're wrong and you're wrong. Let's just, open the floor for enriching experiences.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's not an easy road, is it? But that's where creativity comes in. Make it
In
fun.
fact, when you talk about diversity there during COVID, I remember sitting down with my daughter. So she's just 15. I don't know what age she would have been at the time,
Hey,
and it was okay. We needed to do some homeschooling. So for me, I got her friends together and we ran a little thing. We did an hour every morning and afternoon. They called it Cool School. We had so much fun,
nice.
pin the globe. We we did mic sync on
Oh,
a Friday. We invited grandparents in to take quizzes. We had so much fun. But one of the other things was my daughter said that she'd love to see RuPaul's Drag Race. She'd seen that advertised. And I said, okay, that's going to be part of your homeschooling.
yeah.
And we had the richest conversations about empathy, about fashion, about compassion, about being challenging assumptions. And watching that, I knew it would be a great experience, but we'd watch an episode, and at the end of it, the rich conversations that it enabled, because it's about humans, isn't it?
Education at its
It's
finest.
about people. It's about people. So it just gave us the opportunity to have the most wonderful conversations.
Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
so she went back into school and said that was what our homeschooling comprised of.
So can you imagine making a suggestion? But people wouldn't be surprised by me, but going into a school and making a suggestion on the curriculum, we're going to put RuPaul's Drag Race. And I think that's a brilliant learning vehicle. But it's it's but when you've experienced it, just how many penny drop moments you get thinking, oh, I did not know any of that. And I did not know that watching this would open my mind up to something
Yeah,
else. And that's the
yeah,
thing, it's where it's trying to expose people to different experiences in a safe way, isn't it, really?
yeah.
And you wouldn't have had that, would you? You probably would never have particularly chosen to learn from RuPaul's Drag Race until you were brought that experience by your daughter.
Yeah, well, we may have watched it, but because we saw it as just an opportunity to engage in something thoroughly enjoyable, um, and maybe it's sometimes challenging in terms of behaviors. We were able to talk about emotional intelligence. We were just able to talk about so much. There was no pressure, there was no exam at the end of it. It
Hey,
just
that's
opened up
it.
rich conversation where there was deep learning from both of us. Like I learned from my daughter just as much as she learned from me, or we learned from observing what went on. And I suppose you could probably do it with other television programs, I suppose, because it was during COVID. It was, you were in, and you were looking for opportunities to do something differently or have different conversations.
Probably could, you probably could. It's a reframe, isn't it? You probably could. We consume stuff, don't we? We
Mm.
just consume without even paying attention. But I think if you take anything and set it as a learning experience, what can we pull out of that? Let's do reflection on it afterwards. You can get meaning out of anything, can't you? And real good. And that's the point, is and you again, just before we wrap up, from something
Mm.
you said at the beginning, we have this system that's set up to put pressure on people to just
Yeah.
retain and regurgitate information, which for me is the majority of the time completely pointless and doesn't have any impact on the rest of your life necessarily. And yet we're not taught, or we're taught to avoid situations where we can have these rich, purposeful
Yeah.
conversations. So that we have to flip that around a little bit, don't we? We have to change the way we do things.
Well, for me, the word that struck me that you said there is pressure. Why should we have to feel pressure
And that's
when
why
we're
we
trying
want
to
to learn.
learn? Yeah,
That's what I want to learn. You said at the beginning it made you sad that people just didn't have that fire. That's why, because they just experienced this. Force creates
yeah,
resistance.
the
Physics. Force
disconnect.
someone to
Yeah,
do something, and they're going to resist it. If you
yeah.
open up an experience that they love, they're going to be like a sponge. Like I would never have thought in a million years that I would be interested in science. I wasn't in school. That's not how my brain normally operates. But I am like a sponge for science now. Neuroscience, specific kinds of
Yeah.
science. Quantum physics, never in a million years would, if somebody had said that to me. Because I resisted that line of learning in school because I had bad experiences and I was forced to do something I didn't want to. Now I'm choosing and I'm exploring what it means to me. I'm like a sponge. I love it. And that's what we should be doing.
And that's where the context makes a big difference as well. So you're in a context now where that's really meaningful
Yep. It
for
shapes
you.
every day
Yeah,
of my life and my purpose. It's
yeah,
connected to my purpose and my
yeah,
passion. So of course I want to
yeah,
learn.
yeah.
So I've got three little questions for you. The first one is a massive big one, and you probably answered that already, but I'm asking everybody the same questions.
Okay.
How can we change the world? What is it? What can we do that will change the landscape? Big question, I know.
The world is changing.
Yeah.
We can contribute by being kind to nature, by being kind to people, by being kind to ourselves. Um, yeah, so it's probably not the probably not the answer that many people would give, but the world is changing anyway. If we can consciously and deliberately operate differently.
That's a brilliant answer because you're quite right.
Um,
It is changing. We just need to blow
Yeah.
back at it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Our contribution to that change needs to be a kinder, more thoughtful,
And if
respectful one to nature and others.
imagine if
Yeah.
every imagine if you're, let's say, I'm going to get this as far and wide as I can. Imagine that piece of advice. If every single person could have that piece of advice and just be kinder to themselves and their environment and others and the
Yeah.
planet. That's
Yeah.
it. That's the game changer, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that's internal. That's focusing on you and what you can do, not
Yeah.
affect everything else. It's just a little shift
Yeah.
in your own life is massive. It's like the ripple effect, isn't it? I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Question is, from the macro to the micro,
Yeah.
you think of something from your perspective, a piece of advice that people could just do in their daily life that would help them to feel better? Because the podcast is called The Art of Feeling Better. So I'm trying to collectively build a toolkit where we share a bit of wisdom, something, any little thing that might help people feel a little bit better just in the day to day.
On a serious note, I think it's really valuable if you have some kind of practice. If you've something now, like when I wake up, I drink lemon juice and hot water.
Yep.
Now that is a practice, because sometimes I think, oh, I'd love a coffee. It's like, no, I'm just going to start with something cleansing, something healthy, because that's kind of maybe setting me off on the right track. Or it could be doing qigong, or it could be doing a bit of mindfulness. And I'm sure lots of people will mention those kind of things. But to make you feel better, if you said, okay, just one thing, just find something that makes you laugh.
Yes.
Just find something that makes you smile or makes you laugh. If it's a picture, if it's I don't know, if it's a joke, if it's, I don't know, just find something that makes you laugh.
That brain chemistry, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Love it, smiling and laughing. Well, that was a really nice segue into the last question, because speaking of medicine, my one of my big things is music medicine. And for me, laughter, music, collaboration, community, people, there's lots of medicine that we have that's free and at our disposal. But music for me, and I'm also building a Art of Feeling Better playlist on Spotify. So I'm asking everybody to chuck a song in the mix. And I started it off with Higher and Higher by Jackie Wilson, which is an oldie. But is there anything that you like to listen to? Any song at all that you like that you want me to put on the playlist? And if you think of another one, you can just message me and I'll add two.
Oh, that's a really tough question. Yeah.
If you're having a really bad day and you thought, I'm just going to get my headphones in and go for a walk, what is the thing? What would you go for the first if you were going to put a tune on? What would you pick?
I can't believe I'm even going to say this.
But it can't be as interesting as Chris's was. I'll tell you what his was in a minute.
Mine is Black Betty,
Okay.
but by Caravan Palace.
I don't think I've heard that version.
Oh, go and have a listen to that. That's fun. Go and have a listen to that and stay still. Or the other one is, Ukraine years ago won the Eurovision. Do 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 do. I can't remember the name, but my husband always remembers for me.
Yeah, it was a real boppy one, wasn't it? I can Google that. We can find my phone. Okay, so I'm going to put both of those on. So Ramjan by Caravan
Palace.
Caravan Palace, and whatever the Eurovision entry was.
Yeah, the Ukraine. It was
entry.
Yeah.
I don't. As soon as I play it, I'll be able to recognise it because I know it was a bit of a, wasn't it?
I can't believe I even started to try and hum it there.
Yeah, well, Christmas was driving home for Christmas, and I was not expecting a Christmas driving home for Christmas. Chris Rea.
I get that. Yeah.
Well, I was like, I wasn't expecting a Christmas tune, but yeah, and he gave a really good, explanation of how it makes him feel, and it's about getting home and being with people you love. That is an unexpected curveball, but I love it.
Yeah. No, mine are very different. Mine, you wouldn't be able to stand still. Or sit still. That would be the challenge. Sit still.
Sit still. I mean, I'll send you the link later because it's building up really nicely. I've had people on social media putting their things in as well. I guess, but it's just lovely because we're all learning different bits of different music as well, and everybody's kind of contributing. And every single song on there it's just good vibes, really, really good vibes. So yeah, I'm going to keep on until it's we keep on adding indefinitely, can't I? So beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Oh, thank you so much, Valerie. That was, I mean, there's so many more things to talk about, isn't there? And there's so many big conversations. And I'm hoping after the 1st of May, when we do our webinar, that there might be other people to bring in the mix and more
Yeah.
conversations and different amazing people to meet. So but I'm really grateful for your time, because I know everybody's pressed for time, aren't they? But I think this is so important. If we can,
We shouldn't be.
shouldn't.
No, if we don't make the time for stuff like this, then
Well,
what are
yeah,
we doing? You know, shoulder to the grindstone, work, work, work.
no, I'm
We
hoping
need
this
to
will
do
be
this.
part of
Yeah.
the change. We can share wisdom, can't we, and have some really lovely
Yeah.
conversations. So I'm going to officially say thank you very much, and that will be ready for me to chop my edit for the land of podcasting.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll be seeing you next. I'll be seeing next Thursday, isn't it, for our
Yeah.
webinar?